Hi everyone, Gene here. Welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, where every single week we answer the most common and uncommon questions about tapping and how to get the most out of your tapping. And over the course of the next 5 weeks, including this week, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be answering the 5 most common questions that I get from readers and listeners just like you. These are topics that come up over and over again. And since they have been coming up so much recently, I thought it would be great for us to spend a little time walking through them. If you are not already getting regular updates about the podcast, all you need to do is go to tappingpodcast.com, and there you will find information on how you can get every single episode absolutely free on your Apple device, on your Android device, in Spotify, or in your inbox so you don't miss any shows going forward. This is Gene Monterastelli, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast, recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 335, originally aired October 31st, 2018. Hi everyone, I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Today we are going to talk about the most common question that I hear over and over and over again. How do we make sure that we tap in a regular way? I hear from people all the time saying, I know I should be doing this, and I just never seem to reach for the tool. So today we're going to talk through a number of things that you can do to make tapping more regular in your life. For those of you who are supporters of the Tapping Q&A podcast and get the bonus podcast every single month, make sure you check your podcatcher. Over the weekend, we released the special bonus podcast for October, where we talked about boundaries, how you create boundaries, how you can mend boundaries that you have with others that are super porous, where you feel like you are giving more than you are receiving in relationships, and some real step-by-step advice. If you'd like to receive that bonus podcast and lots of other really cool goodies for being a supporter of the podcast, all you need to do is go to tappingqa.com/support, tappingqa.com/support. The link is in the show notes. So I would be willing to bet that when people tell me the most common struggle that they have with tapping, 25% of the time the response is, I just don't reach for tapping. I know it's a useful tool, but I never seem to be able to do it. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you 4 things that will make it much easier for you to make tapping something that you regularly reach for, and reach for in the moment when you are struggling, and turning it into a routine so it happens more and more often. Because we know it's so useful. And if you know it's useful and you don't do it, then it becomes really easy to start beating yourself up because you are missing opportunity and you are wasting time. So here are some things to keep in mind that will make it much easier for you. Number 1, create a new habit. So it takes time for us to get into a space where something becomes habitual. And the reason that is that when we do something over and over again, we are creating neural paths for doing that activity, but it takes us doing it a certain number of times before it becomes something that is habitual. You will hear people often quote that it takes between 14 and 21 days to create a new habit, and there's a really amazing study that leads us to that. The details of that study aren't super important at this point, but just know that it takes time to do it. As an analogy, think of it kind of like a path. If you were walking through a field in which you've never walked through before, after you walk through the field, we might be able to see your footsteps, we might see the grass that's matted down, but a few hours later, there might be no recollection of that at all, as the leaves of the plants have regained their strength and stood back up again. But if you walk that path over and over again, slowly that path becomes more trod. It's easier to see because there are remnants of the path, and it actually creates space for you to move through. And that's basically what happens inside of our brain. The more we do something, the deeper the path becomes, the easier it is for us to fall into that. I mean, Think about putting on a pair of pants. You always put on a pair of pants, one leg first and the other leg second, just because of that habit, and you don't think about it. It's just the steps that happen. So here are some easy ways to make something a habit. So let's pretend that you are going to make tapping a habit. So this is what you go through. Okay. Number one is to do it at the same time. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to do it at the exact same time at 6:47 every single day, but to do it at the same point in your day consistently. So for example, you might choose to do it after you brush your teeth in the morning. Now, the exact time you brush your teeth in the morning is going to depend on when you get up and what your day looks like. I mean, for me, I get up depending on the day as early as 4 in the morning, as late as 8 in the morning, but I still brush my teeth as one of those first few steps in the morning. So the exact time isn't important, but the time within my day is important. The second thing is to do it in the same location. That if you do it in the same location, that location starts to remind you of that task. And so it becomes anchored in. It's a time of day, it's a location that makes it easier for us. The third thing to do, and I've already mentioned it, is to attach it to a habit that you already have. Starting a new habit from scratch is difficult because you're having to think about it and do it from willpower until it becomes that habitual thing. But if we're attaching it to something that you already do, then it becomes easy to do. One of the ones I use the most often is the example I already gave, which is brushing your teeth, because almost all of us do that every single day. Most of us do it at least twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. And so it's something that we're already connected to. For me, I spend some time stretching every single morning, and I spend some time on my foam roller just because I have a better day when I do that. And so tapping is a really natural thing to attach to that thing. So if there's something that you are doing every day already, tap after it or before it, because that habit is already installed. The next thing that you can do that makes it easier to make it a habit is to do it earlier in the day. That when we're creating a new habit, it is requiring us to use willpower to do that. It's a conscious act of our will to do this thing that is not regular. And willpower is a limited resource. And so as the day goes on, you're using that willpower to make all of the choices throughout your day, what you're going to have to lunch, what you're going to wear, what order you're going to do tasks at work. And because that is the case, you're putting yourself in a position where it becomes more difficult to navigate all of these things later in the day because you've spent that willpower. That's the reason why when you create a new eating plan, breakfast is really, really easy and dinner and after dinner is really hard, is because you have expelled all of that willpower throughout the day and it becomes harder. So if you're creating a new habit, the earlier in the day you do it, the more likely you are to be able to make that conscious choice. And by doing it over and over again, we start deepening that path, which makes it a habit. The last thing that we can do that makes creating a habit easier is initially to only do it for a small amount of time. Now, I think of my clients who decide that at New Year's, they're going to get themselves in shape. And to get themselves in shape, they're going to work out 3 times a week for 90 minutes. Well, that is a huge ask, because what you are doing is you are asking yourself to find 4.5 hours to do something that you weren't doing before. And I don't know about you, but I don't have 4.5 hours just laying around in my schedule where I can throw in something new. And so when we choose a large chunk of time that we're going to try and do, it becomes really difficult because of the amount of changing we have to do the rest of our lives to accomplish it. It would be great if you were in a circumstance where every single morning you were going to spend 30 minutes tapping and that's what was going to happen. But because finding 30 minutes every single day becomes a difficult thing for something that is not habitual, it makes it hard to do. So start with a small amount of time so that the habit becomes you are tapping every single day. Then once that becomes a habit, then you can expand the amount of time that you are tapping every single day, because the habit is already installed. So, to review, to create a habit, do it at the same time of day if you can, do it in the same location, attach it to something that you are already doing. Earlier in the day is better, and start with a small amount of time. If you do that consistently over time, it is going to become a habit. So, number one, create a habit out of it. The second thing you can do is to set the goal of tapping every single day around the amount of time you are tapping, not the amount of progress you are making. Sometimes when we tap, it can go really super fast and we can go really super deep. I was working with a client on Friday and we were supposed to tap for a half an hour. And after about 11 minutes, we had done really profound work around money and family and a bunch of stuff. And she was done. Like we had just completely wrung her out and doing more work wouldn't have been useful. There are other times where I can spend 45 minutes on an issue and I don't see this real tangible progress. Now, I know I am doing work and I'm undermining the belief system and I'm making it easier for me to see the world in a new way, but there's not this immediate tangible result inside of that session. And so even though both of those sessions happened and they're both valuable, our emotional response to them is different. 11 minutes, profound work, 45 minutes, boy, it just feels like I'm scratching the surface. And so if your definition of success is based specifically on the outcome, then it becomes really easy to become frustrated. So when you are trying to integrate tapping and to make it happen more often, say, I am going to tap for this many minutes, set a timer, and then you are successful. Because I know if my goal is to tap for 7 minutes every single morning, I can achieve that. I can find 7 minutes in my morning. I can find an issue to tap on for 7 minutes. I can execute it for 7 minutes. Now, again, some days those 7 minutes might be absolutely amazing and absolutely transforming, and other days not so much. But because you are doing it every single day, you are making a habit out of it. So the goal being the amount of time, not the amount of outcome, makes it easier for you to persist because you have been successful, even if there hasn't been world transforming changes. So 1, make it routine. 2, do it for a specific amount of time. 3, as a way to make this happen more often, is to make tapping every single day a non-negotiable. And I mean exactly that no matter what happens today, this particular thing is going to happen. And what I have found in my life is typically I can only have 2, maybe 3 non-negotiables. And that doesn't mean I have 2 non-negotiables in my personal life and 2 non-negotiables in my health and 2 non-negotiables in my work. No, I have such a limited amount of willpower. There are only 2 things that hell or high water, I'm going to do those things. And when I'm working on those things, sometimes I might be doing it at 11:45 at night before I'm going to bed, but I've said this is a non-negotiable and this is something I'm going to do every day. So choose tapping as a non-negotiable. Say that no matter what happens, I am going to tap for 5 minutes every single day, no matter what. I hope to do it in the morning in a structured way, but even if it's just 5 minutes as I'm laying in bed, getting ready to fall asleep, I'm going to do it every single day. Again, by doing something over and over and over again, we make it a habit, which makes it easier for us to be able to do it in the future when we need it to do it every single day. So make it a non-negotiable. If you do those 3 things, 1, go through the steps that I laid out on how you can create a habit. 2, as you're making that plan, choose the amount of time that you're going to tap, not the amount of progress you're going to make. And 3, make it non-negotiable. This is something I am going to do every single day. If you do these 3 things over the course of the next couple of weeks, you are going to be in a circumstance where tapping every single day is something that happens that becomes easier and easier for you to use. And 2 great things are come out of that. One, you're going to tap a lot more. And two, you're going to be in a circumstance where you're not going to be beating yourself up for not tapping regularly. So you get a bonus both directions. So give that a try. I would love to hear what your response is to doing something like that. It's pretty straightforward. Like nothing that I shared in the last 15 minutes is revolutionary in any way, but it's going to put you in a position where taking action is going to become so much easier because you have a really strategic plan to take the action to tap every single day. So make sure you stick around for the next couple of weeks. Like I said, we're going to cover the 5 most common questions that I get from readers and listeners just like you. If you aren't set up to receive the podcast free every single week, go to tappingpodcast.com. Again, there's information on Android devices, Google devices, Apple devices, how you can do it in Spotify, how you can get emails so that you make sure you get every single one of these so you don't miss them. If there's someone in your life who could use this information, please be our ambassador, pass it along. Don't spam your inbox and send it to everybody in the world. But if you've heard a friend of yours who is a tapper recently complain about the fact, I wish I was tapping more, this is a really easy process that you can pass along to them, which will make it easier for them to be successful. The most common place that people find a podcast is from a recommendation of a friend. So it would be a great way for you to appreciate the podcast. And it's the highest form of thanks that you can give me is to pass it along to someone else so that they are using the resource as well. If you have a question, if you have a comment, if you have a topic that you'd like us to cover in the future, like these 5 right here are coming from people like you, I can always be reached, Gene, Gene, at tappingqa.com. Or if you just click on the contact link on the website, if you happen to have the Tapping Q&A app, which is free for both Apple and Android devices, if you click contact, you can leave me an email or you can send me a voice message from right inside of the app. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, this is Gene Monterastelli. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyright Gene Monterastelli, Tapping Q&A 2016. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Monterastelli or Tapping Q&A.